Fear Not, Episode 84. Hi, I'm Billy Atwell, and I believe that consistently facing your fears is the only way to realize your truest self and to make those confident choices that will help you to obtain your deepest held hopes and dreams. I have faith that this podcast series will show you that you are not alone, that it will strengthen you and give you courage to face your fears, and that it will help you to permanently cross over into a life of living beyond your fears. Join me on this journey as we listen and learn from others as they share their experiences in facing and overcoming their own fears. The legendary Patty Palmer spent over 3 decades developing the Palmer Plush tissue fitting method. This technique allows you to create clothes that fit your body rather than rigidly adhering to the pattern's contours. Palmer Plush fitting workshops and online courses are designed for both the beginner and advanced sewist and provides a polished piece that looks custom-made. For more information on the available Palmer Plush fitting workshops and online courses, visit palmerplush.com. palmerplush.com. Hello, everybody. Today you and I are going to be joined by Eileen McKusick. Hello, Eileen. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks.
Yeah, are you ready to fear not today?
I am.
Eileen is a researcher, writer, educator, and practitioner who has been studying the effects of audible sound on the human body since 1996. She's the originator of the sound therapy practice biofield tuning, the founder of the Biofield Tuning Institute, and the author of the best-selling Nautilus Award-winning book, Tuning the Human Biofield, Healing with Vibrational Sound Therapy. Eileen, can you take a few moments to fill in the gaps and maybe also give us a brief glimpse of your personal life?
Well, fill in the gaps. I've been doing sound therapy for 21 years. I started it kind of as a hobby, introducing it into my massage therapy practice, which was just part-time. And in about 10 years ago, I made a discovery that really changed my life and changed, the course of what I was doing and turned me into a full-time therapist and researcher and practitioner, and led to me writing the book, Tuning the Human Biofield, which is actually based on my master's thesis. So I've been, exploring how audible sound affects the human body, and have made such interesting discoveries and really turned up a whole subject that isn't really talked about so much, which I find really interesting.
Eileen, would you also share with us today one of the biggest fears that you've had to face?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. For a really long time, I didn't feel fear. I grew up as the youngest in a large family. And, when you're part of a pack and you show fear, you tend to get attacked. And so I've really lived my life very fearlessly in a lot of ways. I traveled and backpacked around the world by myself when I was a teenager. I've started numerous businesses. I'm a real risk taker. I think, sometimes just when it's time to grow, to kind of level up in life sometimes, to go sort of into the unknown zone that involves really stretching yourself. I think that can be scary. But I've never let fear stop me. I tell people that, if you're waiting for the fear to go away before you take a risk or go out on a limb, you're never going to go. The fear doesn't go away. It's when we're faced with things in life that are really terrifying, but we do it anyway. That's where we're really alive. That's where I like to live, in that place.
So when you do come to those new situations where you are sort of breaking through to a new level, how do you do something that just keeps you going, or are you just, at this point, you're so accustomed to it that you just sort of automatically dive in?
Yeah, I think I just automatically dive in. I notice that it's scary and that, it's making me uncomfortable. But I do it anyway. And I think that I've just learned from experience. jump in, because things are never as bad as you're afraid they're going to be, at least in my experience. It's the anticipation leading up to something that, gets you. But once you do it and you kind of get through it, you're like, oh, that wasn't nearly as bad as I was afraid it was going to be.
So, just out of curiosity, because you seem to be so interested in sound, do you talk to yourself at that point to kind of get you to jump in?
It just depends on the severity of it. Sometimes I might thrash around a bit, and then, my husband will be like, "Oh, just get over yourself and do it." So it helps that I have a partner who's also been on this journey with me for a long time, and he's seen, us both go through stages of growth and make commitments to things that involved, just expanding again beyond the known zone. So that helps to have a partner. Um, Even my kids are the same way. Like, they're really supportive. So, and other friends and even family members. Like, I think that it's helpful to have support of people who know you and believe in you. That definitely will propel you along as well.
Is there something
But I
with
don't know if I talk to myself. I don't know. I don't think that I necessarily. I mean, probably, right? We all have an inner coach, some kind or another.
I guess that's what I was just sort of asking, was like if you sort of, I mean, maybe you are just extraordinary and you just jump right in. I was just kind of curious. It's like, God, I hope she just at least talks to herself, something. Eileen, is there anything within the biofield tuning that could help someone to face their fears?
Absolutely. What I've learned fundamentally, bouncing sound off people, it's really kind of like sonar. I become kind of like a bat or a dolphin. I bounce sound off and listen to the signal that comes back from people. Because everything in our bodies is in motion, and everything that is in motion makes waves. And waves make sound, whether it's audible or inaudible. And what's really neat about a tuning fork, or an acoustic frequency generator, as I like to call them, is that they technically produce an infinite number of overtones and undertones. And so the overtones and undertones of this living vibration will intersect these inaudible vibrations of the human body. And the sound that the fork is producing will actually change. It will go flat or sharp or loud or soft or full of static. And after doing this for, many thousands of hours, I discovered a kind of pattern around the human body and formed what I call my biofield anatomy hypothesis, which basically states that in addition to cellular memory or brain memory, that we also have a kind of cloud storage system as well, and that we have encoded in standing waves in this diffuse magnetic field that surrounds our body, the actual history of our nervous system. And so I'm able to find areas, to really pinpoint areas where we've had traumatic experiences. When we go through a difficult experience, the record of that is stored as like turbulence in our field, but it's also a permanent record in our body. So if we've had a lot of scary experiences, we're going to be really imprinted with that. We're going to have kind of a over heightened sense of fear or reactivity. And what's very cool about the tuning forks is they not only help me to identify areas in the history. And so we see this field actually as extends about 5 to 6 feet around our bodies. It's bounded by a membrane that's kind of similar to the Earth's magnetosphere or the sun's heliosphere. It's an outer boundary of this bubble. And as we generate information, it moves away from us. So information I find encoded close to the body happened currently or recently, whereas the outer edge of the field holds a person's gestation, birth, and earliest childhood. So if people had a traumatic birth, for example, I would find heavy perturbations or turbulence or noise in the signal about 6 feet away from their body. So specific regions relate to specific states of mind. For example, if you end up with issues with your left ankle or left foot, it's very often an indication that you are stuck or mired in a difficult or toxic situation that you would like to move away from but feel as if you can't. A lot of people are held back by familiarity. So if they're in a situation that isn't comfortable, but it's familiar, then it's better the devil you know. So, if I was working with a client, I might start 6 feet away from their left foot and come in very slowly with a vibrating tuning fork to find these areas of distortion. And the distortion will also trap the magnetic field as well. It will cause the field to bunch in that particular place. So it's not circulating through the whole system. So it's almost like you don't have all of yourself available to you, especially if you've had a lot of trauma, and especially if it was very early on in your life. If someone feels like they're continually self-sabotaging themselves, I might work in their right knee because I find information encoded in that area that has to do with being blocked by other people. And if you are frequently blocked from your natural inclinations growing up, you're so accustomed to that blocking going on that you might be continuing that pattern. And then that pattern, actually, we end up becoming walled in because these experiences in our field actually have math. They have a kind of containment to them. And that's why people struggle so much to get out of ditches or out of, particular ways of thinking and being. And so with the work, we're able to find the noise and find the stuckness. And the body does an extraordinary thing when it has this reflected back to it. So just by holding the fork in a chaotic zone, the body hears its own noise in the signal and will spontaneously auto-tune itself. And it will resolve the noise in the signal down to just signal. It will become clear. And when that happens, the energy that's stuck there releases and goes back into circulation. And suddenly people find themselves unstuck. It's a very exciting process to witness, helping people get past their fears, get past their habits, get past what's familiar into a greater sense of personal freedom.
It sounds like the tuning forks kind of break up. I mean, that's the visual that I'm kind of getting. It just sort of breaks up like it's a dam so that the flow can continue. Would that be
Yeah,
inaccurate?
absolutely. And it's not so different than how kidney stones are broken up with sound. So lithotripsy is sending a wavefront, a pulsed sound wavefront into a kidney stone, which then breaks the stone up and makes it smaller and easier to pass. So sound opens up space between molecules. And whether it's the dense molecules, like in a kidney stone, for example, or the diffuse, subtle magnetic field, which, it's so fun teaching this to people because it sounds so implausible and strange. And yet, I've trained hundreds of students how to do the work. And when, somebody first gets up with a tuning fork and they're approaching the body and they hit a wall, they might be 4 feet away, but all of a sudden the tuning fork doesn't want to go any further. And it's because there is a density there. And that is exactly what the sound does. It breaks it up like a little jackhammer and it gets that energy that has been frozen, unfrozen, and circulating.
Thank you for getting a little bit more in detail with that. Are you ready for the speed run?
Sure.
What individual, whether they be fiction or real, has made the most impact on your life?
I would have to say probably my husband. He has done so much to get me outside of my comfort zone. From helping him put, um, things in the underneath of cars in the middle of the night years ago. I mean, all kinds of things. He's a very embodied, very brave person himself. And he has brought me places that I never would have gone on my own, really stretched me, um, to not be self-limiting.
If you could instantly change one thing in the world, what would you change?
You know, I'm going to give you a really real answer here. Um, Sexual abuse. As a therapist, as somebody who has spent 20 years really exploring people's subconscious minds, I have just seen over and over again how so many people are molested in childhood. And it goes on to really, it's such a theft of power and autonomy and boundaries. And, I know it's going on all over the world. It's so much more widespread than I think people realize. And And I say all over and over again, like if there was one thing I could change in the world, it would be to stop that.
What's your biggest weakness?
Chocolate ice cream.
What's your biggest strength?
I'm a good soldier. I'm one of those people who just will do whatever needs to be done. If something needs to be done and I need to do it, I get it done.
And if you could only have one book to read, what book would that be?
Well, I did Course in Miracles years ago, back in the 20s, and when I was in my 20s, and I remember thinking there was just so much interesting material there. I just did the exercise a day for 365 days, but that book really made me think differently about life and what I believed about the nature of life. There's quite a lot there to explore, so maybe that.
Do you have a favorite sound?
Champagne bottle opening. I mean, that's always a happy sound because you're always celebrating something. I think my favorite sound is peepers in the spring. Here in New England, when you hear those frogs at night, you're through the winter and spring is here. It's a very happy, happy feeling.
And Eileen, if someone would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, my website is biofieldtuning.com. So that's all one word, bio, field, tuning.com. And there's a contact page there. So I've got email if anybody wants email.
And what parting advice would you like to leave with us today?
Well, life is short and the world needs us to be our authentic selves. And I think that we were at a juncture where it's time to risk it all, to risk really being authentic and to go after, what I call your mail slot, MAIL slot. It's sort of like my connection to the universe. When I listen to that and I follow it, and I'm so grateful to live a life that's creative and interesting. And I would just encourage people to be brave and, choose the life that's interesting and true.
Well put, and thank you. Eileen, I want to also thank you for coming on the show today, not only sharing your story, but really helping us to understand about what you do and how it might be able to help us. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, you cannot achieve everything, but you do have the God-given ability to achieve anything. So stay focused, out of fear, and keep on keeping on. Until next time, be well and peaceful. For more information on today's episode and guest, or for resources that will assist you in overcoming your fears, visit livingbeyondyourfears.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, where 3 times a week we move to a life beyond our fears.